back to part 2. I hope the first one wasn't so complicated. The second part actually is less complicated, but it does take a lot more time in terms of actual labour time rather than setting and all that. I actually feel like the second part is the most useful in terms of making any 3D props, and hopefully you guys will be able to see that. Again, this is just a prototype and it is by far my most difficult prop that I have made, but I thought I would put this tutorial out now as there is a break in when you can play Final Fantasy. Today I am filming this on the day that the servers are down, ready for Endwalker, so here we go.
Using your own files or the one I provided in the link below, you can start printing the files off in normal PLA. I like to use black so it's easier to see when I'm sanding. Then you have to do the tedious task of removing all the supports, and honestly guys, I cannot stress how much I dislike this process. After that you can start using a really good super glue to super glue the pieces. Some people like using other types of glues and that's totally fine. Then you want to fill in the gaps. You can use any filler, I know Polyprops has some, or you can just use builder's cork, which is probably the cheapest option. After that's set, you can prime it and give it a light sand first. Then you want to go for a more heavy duty sand. This tool is not necessary at all. I just bought it because it was in the sale and it speeds up some of the harder lines to get rid of. But after that you'll need to do hand sanding just to make sure you got it all. So there's no cutting corners here. I'm not very efficient with my support builds, so there are still some blemishes on it, but this is how good I got it. You can take it even further if you want. I then repeated the same process on the tips. I want you to bear in mind you have to do this 4 times for every single piece, so if something doesn't look too perfect, that is purely for my sanity, and yeah. Then, because I'm not very good at 3D modelling, I chose to use the rest of the details out of foam, and I just basically cut some shapes like this. Then I couldn't get this tip part perfect, so I decided to use some foam to add some detail to hide some of the blemishes, which actually worked out really well. After, I started to use a 2-piece epoxy clay to create the rest of the details and give it a more elegant look to it. I recommend epoxy sculpt because it seems to have the best adhesion to 3D prints and is very strong and easy to sand. I'd like to point out I'm not using any fancy tools here, it's literally just a duct taped piece of clay like plastic thing and one plastic tool off Amazon. Because I made this before Sage actually came out, I realised I missed some details, so I just quickly added them with a soldering iron, making sure I wore PPE. I repeated that same thing for these extra details I added on the tips. I then made these out of foam. I always planned to make these out of foam so that they were able to float as they would remain very light. This is quite a simple process of just gluing pieces and soldering in the details. Then I sealed the foam using Plasti Dip, but you can use any foam sealant. I only did this on the pieces that had foam. Here I'm testing the grip levels on the acrylic rods, and that is my dog Kuma and Zuko. Now you can witness how bad I am at framing things. I do this totally by myself, so I apologise. But all I did was prime and base the pieces of plastic and foam. Then began gluing them together. I started with the black and I just blocked out the colours with the main 3 colours used. If you're using a different design, this part's kind of irrelevant, but then I did the tips with the airbrush. Again, this is not necessary, I just felt like the actual reference had a more blended look, so I just took it from a white to a black, just slowly adding more and more white as I went along. I do apologise for my framing again. I'm so sorry. I film and make all of these by myself, but hopefully you get the point. I then glued on the resin circle pieces here, making sure I put foil on the back of them just to grab an extra bit of light. Then I just went around the details with a black marker just to give it a more cartoony look. And this is what mine looks like 4 times. Now I'll try and explain the back. Again, this is completely prototype, which is why I don't have that much on it, but basically it's 4 PVC poles holding the acrylic rods in. I used Warbler to seal them in place, and then I just tied some ribbon around so it goes around my shoulders and my waist. The movement is actually really good, however this room is so cramped with my stuff that I was knocking everything, so it looks a little clumsy, but if you're outside I'm confident it will be fine. It's quite heavy, but it's a balanced weight, so it's bearable. This isn't the most practical costume, I'm aware, but I did it and I'm proud, and this is how you take them off. You just sort of wiggle them out and you can pack them away for better storage, which all cosplayers need.
Finally guys, I hope that was somewhat useful. I do apologise, this is my first tutorial I have made for public, and I am still very bad at doing that totally alone. I might be lucky to have someone around that film a slight angle, but otherwise it's just me in my garage, and I'm hoping I can shed some new knowledge or information for anyone who asks. So yeah, and if you do like this sort of stuff, or you have some sort of gentle improvements, emphasizing the word gentle, please feel free to tell me and I will work on them, and if you do like them, please let me know so I can continue making them and hopefully improving them. But yeah, hope you guys have a great weekend.